Yeah.
California office.
Oakland.
Oh my gosh, I've got to touch base with her because my office is in Oakland too.
Oh yeah.
So we're getting ready to move. So, but I haven't seen her in ages, and she was just awesome.
She's great. I mean, I've definitely stayed in touch with her. And,
good.
She's done a lot of really interesting. She actually worked for the mayor of San Francisco for a while and did a lot of work on, like youth immigrant related. Broadly issues, really? Right? I mean,
right.
that's what like her interest is at the intersection of education and immigration.
Yeah.
And
I thought she was at the immigration policy.
She left AYPF and went to MPI. Migration Policy Institute, and she worked on their team for a while, like almost 5 years. And then she got recruited by the mayor of San Francisco to work, at a really interesting time at the intersection of a lot of, issues related to this. But then got hired away by Jobs for the Future. I think the political side of it was, getting like a lot of like compliance type things. And I mean, she left before the election, but like,
it's tough.
She just was like, I feel like I'm moving away from like the ability to influence. And she's really, you should. I'm happy to do a connection.
Oh, please. Please. Because she's just one of the, you just meet these people that sometimes just really impress you about their passion. And then it's amazing.
This is like such interesting work.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I'm happy to make that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It.
Sorry, sure. I bring my computer and I forgot a pen.
I'm the same way. I didn't bring my computer today because you know what I'm just gonna say. Because I know Ruth.
Oh, someone's Ruth in.
There she is.
All right. Hello? Wait, nope. Hey Ruth, can you hear us?
You've got the video muted.
She's got her. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, great.
Do you wanna? Her video is
right.
I can see 2 people. I see Sharon and I see someone else. Start my video.
Jennifer.
We can't see you yet.
There you
are. Okay.
Okay.
See you, Ruth.
Hello.
And your cello.
I know. I was like, I see the cello in the background. You have to tell us the story.
Well, the story is I grew up in a family of string players, but I always wanted to play the cello, and it looked beautiful and I loved the sound, but I never did start until I was 40. And then I did it for about 5 years, and then my cello teacher moved and I never started again.
Oh.
So maybe after I'm done working, I'll pick it up again. But I keep it here just as
inspiration.
I keep begging her to just pick it up and play it for me because I just love it. I love it.
You don't know how it sounds when you start back on a string instrument.
I guess
I'm in the same spot. I played the violin for a long time and then stopped playing, and then I picked it up recently, and like my brain and my fingers don't
know
the way they used to, and it's just like,
just practice.
The people, I don't want to.
Oh, I'm a percussion.
Yes, that is Paula. Can you see? Sorry, the camera's not perfect.
That's Paula.
Maybe I'll move over there.
Can you move down a little bit?
Yeah. Is this better?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you. And there's a darkness to the room. But
this is a light for Hollywood. Yeah. This is all windows here. It's this beautiful building.
Yeah, that's better. Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, no, we're getting there. This is good. Okay, we're good. Well, thank you for making the time to meet with us. Very good.
Yeah, of course. We're excited to hear what's going on. So I'm happy to start here. Right. I'm happy to start. Just in terms of giving you guys a little bit of a sense of what we think is going on here. Paul and I are both relatively new to the team, so we're still learning the elevator pitch.
Yeah.
So the National Commission was launched a year ago, last month, and we have a great group of commissioners, as well as a Council of Distinguished Scientists, a Council of Distinguished Educators, a Youth Commission, a very robust Partners Collaborative, and a parent panel. Oh, I keep forgetting about them. That's terrible. you know, with the idea that, you know, we feel like this is the moment in time to explore the broad concept of social, emotional, and academic development. And as we've progressed in this work, I mean, I think we're really focused on, you know, how do young people learn? Given that our Council of Distinguished Scientists just released their consensus statements and the like high level takeaway, like there are 4 big consensus statements, but like the one that I think resonates with the work that we're doing is learning is social and emotional, right? And personally, I think push it a little farther in line with NCTAF. You know, teaching and learning is social and emotional. Like, we're not just talking about the young people's experience, but we're talking about all of the adults in the system as well. And I think all parts of the Commission's work represent that. I also think the Commission is very cognizant that when we talk about K-12 education, that we're talking about the broad K-12 ecosystem, inclusive of, you know, not only the actors that work directly within the school walls, but those that influence what goes on in the school and those that support what goes on in the school, inclusive of out-of-school time providers, of parents, of community, and I guess families and community is the right way to say it. And, you know, that's where we are right now. We're really proud of the consensus statements that the scientists released. Our Council of Distinguished Educators is working towards a similar document around we as educators, this is what we know to be true. And the Commission is on track to release the report from the nation, you know, really meant to be reflective of all of this conversation and all of this information gathering that the staff and the commissioners themselves are doing to say, here is the opportunity of this moment now. And so, you know, what we're thinking about and why we're, you know, thrilled to have conversations with you guys is, you know, how do we best understand everything that exists in this universe? And in no way, shape, or form is the Commission designed to be a catalog of everything that exists, but how do we best create opportunities to listen and learn from experts that are in the field? How do we draw upon experience of people that have been doing this work at a variety of different levels, you know, in classrooms, as technical assistance providers, as curriculum developers, as policymakers. And, you know, we're just excited to have this conversation and, you know, really try to think about, you know, how do we leverage all of the knowledge to inform this forthcoming report from the nation and the continued conversations that the Commission and the broad Commission universe is continuing to have.
Great.
So that's where we are.
Great.
And so I know Sabrina reached out to Ross, and Ross as a commissioner was a great place to start, and is a very active and engaged commissioner as well as, you know, overseeing the team here at Aspen too. But I'm, you know, thrilled to have this conversation, and, you know, we had a chance to look at some of the background materials, but, you know, love for Ruth and Sharon, for you guys to just, you know, start and like, let's just see where this goes. We have no concrete agenda right now. We as hard as it is to believe, 1 year in, we are still very much in listening mode.
Well,
so,
yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah, but we only have 15 months left.
Yeah.
So.
And in terms of, I'm curious, one question, in terms of the forthcoming report, what's the timeline for that and who's working on it?
Yeah, so there's a couple of pieces that are forthcoming. So I'm happy to share after this the consensus statement from the Council of Distinguished Scientists, which was released last month. Yeah, that has already come out. The report from our distinguished educators is slated to come out in January. And then our report from the nation is slated to be released in September of 2018. So we are T-minus 11 months from that report. You know, but as part of that, we have, you know, significant amount of other materials. There's lots of case studies profiling what this looks like in schools and communities. There's summaries of research. There's related videos, some geared at educators, some geared at families, some geared at community. There's lots of short one-page tweetable documents aimed at policymakers. You know, we're really trying to think about, you know, how do we shift the conversation?
Right.
And, you know, with all of that, a big part is how do we leverage the work that's going on and the conversations that are already happening, because we are in we are not in the business of recreating the wheel. I mean, the commission is abundantly collaborative and, you know, looking for as many opportunities as we can to say, great, you're really interested in it. Here you go. These are our friends at WestEd. They can help you out. And that's what we're here to do.
Great.
That's great.
So I'll just start, and then Sharon, welcome you to jump in at any point. But
Sure.
I think,
Try to stop me.
yeah, I know, impossible. That's why we love you. So yeah, I think in terms of one of the reasons we're glad to be able to have this chance to talk is that we have in fact been working in this area of integrating social emotional learning and academics for around 2 decades. And it's one of those things. We also were working in a lot of the areas around that the Common Core spoke to for quite a bit longer. So it's a funny thing where suddenly the conversation catches up with the work you've been doing.
Yep.
But that's been the experience. But so in terms of our model, the way we work with teachers is the way we model with teachers in the professional learning what we want them to model with students. And it's very much kind of looking closely at your own learning, opening yourself up to the way that other adults are learning and seeing what's different in that. So for example, I'll just give you one example of a thing that happens at the beginning of, let's say, a 3-day session we might do in the summer with a group of 30 teachers, let's say high school teachers representing different subject areas. We might ask them to do what we call a personal reading history, where you spend some time looking closely at your, you know, what were the things in, let's say, from childhood to high school to college and maybe current life that were places where you felt included, you know, with reading and writing, and what were the places where you felt excluded or you felt there were some barriers or things were getting in your way. And so, and this is in the first 3 hours of a group of people who may not know each other or who may know each other but never have talked in this way, talking about things. And I'll tell you, we see people crying from this. It's like things.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it comes, but we're able, basically what we're doing here is creating a safe community around some of the issues with literacy. And then, of course, people make the leap and say, wow, my students, now I'm seeing what some of my students' issues might be, and this could be something good to do with them. And because they've experienced it themselves, they're able to then replicate it in the classroom. And of course, you know, we give them some time to think about exactly how they would do that with their particular students, because not everybody's the same, obviously, not every classroom is the same, etc. So that's just one little example.
Very powerful.
Yeah, so that in the sense of having our professional learning communities be really anchored in a sense of exploration that includes a lot of social personal. And in terms of our theories of learning, it's based in the work of Lev Vygotsky, a Russian scientist from the 30s, and kind of a way that has developed in a whole, it's called sociocultural learning theory. And it's basically the idea that people's cognitive learning grows in a community of learners. So this idea is also written about a lot by Wenger and Lave and others. I'm sure, you know, in reading these research reports, there are many names that come up, but I'm just saying this has been kind of the stream. There's theory behind what we do, and really in a funny, I mean, not in a funny way. Long ago, my co-director and I, Cynthia Greenleaf, who herself is a distinguished researcher, we've talked for a long time about what we call doing boutique professional learning for the mall. So it's the idea that we have been engaged for the past couple decades in designing professional learning that bundles together lots of different elements of learning so that you're not only doing a social emotional thing, but you're also also looking at literacy. And you're not only doing those two things, but you're also, at the same time, there's a twist on, so how do you as a science teacher experience these kinds of issues socially, personally? And it might be, you know, wow, here I am, a science teacher, and I think it shouldn't be my job to worry about whether my students read or write in science. But then you see an English teacher read it, you hear what an English teacher does with a science text, and then you go, oh my God, you know, I really better jump in there, because the English teacher, you know, while the English teacher might have some good approaches and sort of say, okay, I know I should pay attention to the topic sentence, and I know I should read captions, and you know, using, let's say, literacy strategies, but the science teacher will say, wait a minute, when we read in science, we're looking for what's the prior established fact? What's the prior knowledge?
Yeah.
What is the scientist, you know, trying to find out or arguing or laying out as a new set of experiments? I mean, so there's a way of reading in science, a sort of disciplinary literacy that then adds a third level. So you have like three sort of cognitively and socially complex things going on. And over the years, we've been able to hone our designs so that it doesn't have to be only for people who are willing to go through a very long professional learning. But, you know, so when we say it's boutique for the mall, we mean that it's really high quality. It's what we would call, or many people would call, inquiry-based professional learning. So it's not just, we'll tell you how to do it and then you'll do it. Or even a lot of people do what they think of as hands-on, where it's like, okay, you're going to do it and then you'll take it back. And that's good. But what we do adds this other element of reflection and inquiry, so that we might go through that activity I described about the social, personal, and the reading history, and how does this affect you, you know, in terms of your discipline and so on, and what kinds of implications does it have for your teaching. And then we might step back and do this kind of metacognitive move, or, you know, looking with more transparency and say, okay, let's look at the learning that just happened. We just spent, you know, let's say an hour doing this set of activities. That what kinds of things went on here? And that's where we pull out our framework, which is on page, I forget what page of our book, but it's
for it.
Yeah.
I'm looking for it.
Maybe,
Keep talking.
it might be page 50. I'm not sure, but anyway, but it's a square with interacting elements. So there's social, personal, cognitive, and knowledge building. And then in the middle, there's a circle that says metacognitive conversation. And then this all rests in a frame or a background context of what we call extensive reading, which means you bring reading into the classroom. You don't just assign it and say, go do it on your own and sink or swim. It's more like, together we will make sense of this, and together we will struggle, and together we will see, you know, what does Elizabeth bring to this, and what does Joaquin bring to this, and what does Jamal bring to this? And so, you know, and Jamal might say, well, I just looked at the last paragraph because I figured that's where they're going to sum it all up. It's like, whoa, you know. Or somebody else will say, well, I just kept reading the first sentence over and over and over, and I couldn't get past it. And somebody else will say, well, I was confused by the first sentence, but I decided to keep reading. And by the time I got to the third sentence, it started to make sense. So I
knew it was in the back. She threw me off.
Yeah. Anyway, so in the professional learning situation, we would step back and we would say, take a look at this framework. And we always come back to the framework because we find that teachers find it helpful to have a framework, because otherwise it's just a bunch of skills like questioning, you know, connecting and all that. So we said, take a look at the framework. Let's look at what we just did. What elements of what we just did map onto the framework? What did we do? Well, we were writing about our personal history, so that's personal. And then we shared with each other, so that's social. And then we connected it to how we might do something in our classroom. So that's cognitive, thinking about sort of the application piece. So, you know, looking at how learning is integrated and using that move of stepping back and looking at what we did, whether it's, you know, our own thinking, looking at how did you make sense of, let's say we're looking at a text, you know, a challenging text. what did you do when you got stuck? That's a big move that we make with teachers and students. So anyway, that's kind of, I'm getting into the weeds here, but just to say that we've done this quality professional learning based in this integrated SEL and academics for 2 decades. We have a lot of research on it. And the thing that I think is perhaps, something, in addition to learning to do this professional development in a way that works, not only for that kind of highest level of teachers who are always going to grab onto something new, but really for a lot of people, you might say in the middle, who might want to do something different, but find it difficult or find it challenging. So we've been able to scale up in some of we had an I3 grant, validation grant, we've had a couple seed grants, et cetera, so that we've reached, thousands of teachers in let's say a 3-year period, 2,000 teachers or that kind of thing in multiple states, and done it at a high level of quality such that they're coming back and telling us stories that are, wow, I wish I could start my teaching over again. This is so different. My students, basically what they're saying is my students are so much smarter than I realized they were. It's like, wow, now that I've learned how to turn the discussion over to students more and have them work with each other, teach them how to work with each other in productive ways where they are examining their own reactions to texts, their own sense of confusion, their own sense of, wow, I didn't understand that, and then helping each other solve problems. They are seeing real transformation in what those students can do and how they feel about themselves. So that's a really big thing. When I looked at the research summary and I looked at the 3 interconnected domains, I saw a lot of overlap in what we do. That in the cognitive skills, number 1, there's a lot of focus on controlling your attention. So where is your mind right now? Are you thinking about what's going to happen after school? Okay, let's see if we can bring it back to the page. Okay, it's on the page. Now where is your mind now? So a lot of where is your mind now and what is it doing? A lot of attention control. Also a lot of work on beliefs and attitudes about one's sense of self and approaches to learning and growth. Very much, in terms of, say, the personal dimension. Who are you as a reader? What are your goals as a reader? What's changing for you? What affects, when you're trying to read something, what other things in your environment might affect how you do that? What were some times in your life that reading was fun or that reading was hard? So that whole sense of you're not, reading is not just, and learning is not just an on and off thing. And some people are smart and some people are not smart. You really can change with effort what you're able to do. And then the idea in emotional competence of coping with frustration. This is a really big one in our personal and social and personal dimension. We talk about being able to extend students' ability to deal with ambiguity, frustration, to extend their range in literacy, etc. And then in the social and interpersonal skills, there's a lot of work on cooperating with others. And that includes, obviously, being able to read the social cues and the interpersonal issues that are going on, because you have to work in a team to make sense of a text together. So I think I'll stop for a second and just say that in summary, I think what we would like to see is a chance to have our work be visible to more people, because we've been working on it for a long time. We've seen, both on the quantitative side, but also in terms of, I'll say, hundreds at least, or thousands of stories over the years, people's lives changing, in these really transformative ways for not only students, but teachers, where there's an empowerment factor. I always think of this as literacy for empowerment. It's really, that's my shorthand.
Yeah.
And to be able to share with a broader, become more visible. I think that's where I'm hoping we can get your thoughts and our work together to think about how to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, my mind is like racing right now. My attention is not exclusively focused on one single thing right now because I'm just so excited. You know, first of all, thanks so much for sharing and just kind of walking us through this. You know, having coming off, spent just 2 days with our Council of Educators, it's like such perfect timing because I think we have been having all of these conversations around, okay, what is the it in a lot of ways? And there was a very interesting conversation around explicit versus implicit instruction, right? And how does that fall when you're talking about this concept of seed or how children learn, right? Like how much of this is teaching of explicit skills? Yes, some of this is when we, like dealing with frustration, right? Like punching a wall is not an acceptable response, right? And like, yes, that is a teachable behavior in some ways, but you know, do we have a class on how to deal with frustration, or is that embedded in, you know, in academic, and or is it a combination of both, which I think is still a question, you know, to have, right? Like, are there places in which explicit instruction linked to skill building is critically important depending on where students are development or young people are developmentally versus, you know, the balance headed to much more of this integration type piece? How does this impact you as a reader? How does this impact you as a, you know, as a scientist? How does this impact you as a historian? And so that it's really interesting in a lot of ways that that's the tension that we're hearing from the educators around this work. And, you know, to see an example in which you guys have focused on explicit instruction in literacy as the vehicle for skill building is like a whole new perspective on the conversations that we're having. And, you know, obviously something that we definitely want to bring to the Council of Educators to say, hey, like, here's a research supported best practice. Like, is it worth unpacking in some of these conversations, which we're happy to do. And, you know, as we follow up with them coming off this meeting, you know, let's see what they're interested, in. So, you know, I think from our perspective, right, like that's the first place that we would want to share this and think about it. But I mean, I think the question that you have is a little bit, you know, larger than that, which is, hey, we've got this really great work, and, you know, where do we go from there? And not just like, how do we, you know, sell our services, you know, to a bigger audience, but like, how do we leverage this in what appears to be, you know, a national conversation happening, you know, at the national federal level, at states and localities. And, you know, that's a really great question, and one that I spend a lot of time thinking about, you know, here in my new role here and previously when I was with AYPF. And, you know, I don't know the answer to that right now, right? Like, it's a tough question to ask. And, right, like, in a lot of ways, the pendulum swing is moving away from, you know, we don't have, the federal government is investing less in youth generally, not just education. You know, I think national organizations are posturing and positioning to figure out, like, how do we stay sustainable in this moment in time. You know, states are having an increasingly compliant-driven role in terms of what they have to do for the feds related to ESSA and other related things. And given that they are resource poor as well in some ways, you know, thinking about it, I mean, the best thing I can say right now is that from my perspective, the target is communities, right? And I would say in a lot of ways, the target is networked communities that are really engaged in looking to think about collaborative professional work that they can do together. So, like, first thing that comes to mind in terms of people that I think, you know, would make a lot of sense are, you know, Chiefs for Change in particular. They now have expanded to include district leaders, and I think the district leaders are thinking, you know, really strategically about, you know, what are things that we want to do. I would also say the League of Innovative Schools, which is housed at Digital Promise. They too, it's similarly, set of networked schools that are focused in on this. The Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, through their networked communities of practice. I mean, you guys are probably already connected because I know you have, but, to me, those are the folks that, in a lot of ways, are sort of looking for the content to put into the structure that they've created around. We are very focused on building the capacity of educators, of leaders and educators in our communities to do this work. And so, those are the places right now that I feel like could be really important partners in terms of leveraging this forward. I mean, obviously, right, like, I'm thrilled that you had an I3 validation grant. Something tells me you were able to take advantage of Striving Readers and, other pieces previously, right? Like, sorry, the feds are not in this business anymore. Yeah. It stinks for all of us. Yes. But, I think that, I do think that with the increased flexibility that the feds have given, sorry, you see our email coming up, states and localities are thinking about how to spend dollars differently, and if there's something that's tried and true, that they are very interested in that engagement. Right. Right. And so, where are the opportunities with other, networks that focus on state leaders, whether it's CCSSO or NASB or.
Mm-hmm. We've had a lot of success with NASB.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm just thinking, right, like, NA, ESP or whatever, the elementary and secondary school principals, I mean, honestly, like, these are the folks that are sort of in the business right now of trying to point folks in the direction, of what has to happen, of where the resources are. And so I think that's, one piece. I think from our perspective, right, like, this is we are in a lot of ways the commission's work is a marketing challenge that in some ways you guys are the most nimble people that we've talked to around this.
Really?
Yes, wow. Because here's the thing, yes, you were developed as a literacy, as a literacy professional development, but it's very clear in the way that you just described this to me right now, right, that you are focused on building the capacity of, you are focused on building a set of competencies that not only lead to, a literate reader in multiple subjects, but a compassionate and caring student, an engaged learner. And so you have the possibility of marketing yourself in this very, sort of what's the lingo of the place that you're going and who do you want to be in some ways, right? Like, I don't know that you have to say, right, like, in some ways there could be places that are saying, hey, I'm looking to find a literacy curriculum, I'm looking to find an SEL curriculum, I'm looking to, and like, you guys check all of those boxes, so you're a worthwhile investment, which I think is really interesting. But, going back to what I said, we're in this marketing challenge in some ways of sort of shifting the conversation to say social and emotional learning to moving to learning and social and emotional. That's where you guys started, right? Like, you started with the number one consensus statement that we have. Learning is social and emotional, and in order to do that, we need to look at, whether you look at the 4 dimensions that you guys have, built out in your framework, but that's the professional development that you're providing, and it's super cool. I don't know if you want to add in, or you guys want to respond or question.
So I think that's very interesting that you should say that, because I'm like the partner development person going around and observing all these different groups that are doing things in districts, not just our work, but the stuff that the SEL, the Castle districts are doing, for example, and the stuff that folks are doing that are not part of Castle, but also SEL. And what we see is mostly social emotional learning after school programs. They're not as coherent as as the Castle framework puts out, or what the stuff that you guys are putting out, is not being reflected in a lot of the programs that we're looking at. So it's interesting because I know that they want some more of the academic driver within that comprehensive approach, but it's really hard to find. We work with CCC, which is a elementary. They're great, and they have a very, also they have that academic base, and the trajectory that they've had in development, and Cindy and Ruth are pretty, they're pretty similar. So they started out around the same time, but they went, Roger went, is it Roger or Paul? Went one way, and then they went adolescent high school. So we work together. They're great, and we feel like they're very complementary to the stuff that we do, and we try to. But other than them, it's really hard to find other programs. So if you do know of other programs, it would be great to know, because I think that's really trying to find partners and trying to find alignment in a network like you were talking about is really helpful, because it's not just about. It is about sustainability. I love it. I mean, at the bottom, this is going to go away unless we can really get it into school districts that really need it. And there are so many school districts that really need it, but don't have the resources or don't have the capacity internally to understand the importance of this type of approach. You go in and go, well, you have a curriculum. Because no, we can work with your curriculum. This is about that. Yeah. So it's kind of like, CCC does have a curriculum, right? But then, then they want us to kind of work with them more on the professional development piece, right? The professional learning piece. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting where kind of like the bridge right now where everybody is, because I heard Tim Sharp talk about, really trying to focus more on the academics, but there's a lot of push already. There's a lot of stuff out there that's good stuff. But so you don't want to like derail something that's really working, but you kind of want to infuse it. And so thinking about this networking, what you're talking about in terms of networking, is extremely important right now, because it's sort of important even to double down on it, because there's a lack of, I've got 3 messages this morning, very disheartening. I shouldn't say this in front of Ruth, of districts that just got cut, big time cut. And they're saying, Sharon, I'm sorry, but, I got a 40K cut. I got this. And it's like, my heart goes out to them, because I know how hard they've been trying to get this in their school districts. And they know this is a game changer. We see it with Reading High School, senior high school, 30% on Keystone in 3 years. Now they're at 75%. They went from the lowest high school to the, top. And it's like, these are the stories that it's so hard.
Do you guys build this around, like, is this I'm making the assumption this is not a one-time training.
Oh, no.
Right? So this is, but I mean, I guess, what's and I'm sure you've studied this because that's who you guys are, but like, what's the sweet spot in a lot of ways, right? Like, what's the ideal in terms of engagement with an educator? Is it
10 days?
10 days.
10 days and then coaching. I mean, in terms of what it looks like in the classroom, not that you're going to talk about the research, but in 10 days, after 10 days of the kind of professional learning that they get, which is, coaching and going to and it's also multi-year, because you have to have cohorts that are working together and networking together, right? And then that cross-disciplinary, that collaborative approach over a year or 2 years is what really brings these kinds of results.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What we've seen in Charlotte-Mecklenburg has been a really nice example.
Oh gosh.
Where the district leaders committed to this work over basically, 5 or 6 year period, and they saw a 20% change increase in graduation rate. That they
attribute to this.
And the way it's worked there is that they've had teams of teachers and administrators from all 75 of their middle and high schools go through training. Now, when I say a team, that might be a team of 7 people in the first year, and it might be a 3-day training, or it might be a 3-day plus 2-day training. And then the next And then the next year, maybe for maybe 50 of those schools will say, okay, we want to add another 5 people. So then you have 12 people at that school. So it grows what we call sort of geologic layers. And then you also have a teacher leadership, a sort of teacher leader and administrator leader. So teachers and administrators together meeting in leadership groups that are additional, and we work with them. And now that we have this new book, Leading for Literacy, we have a whole lot of tools in there that they can really make use of. But anyway, they then, the teacher leaders then can kind of help run team meetings. So it's not only the professional learning days, but it's kind of the team meetings that
use them with collaborative tools that they can then go back, and they're constantly networking and working with each other. So that's the whole point. And especially in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, what's really cool is that they actually started from the get-go ensuring that their administrators were working alongside, the principals, and on a volunteer basis too, by the way. It wasn't like it was mandatory. It was very much volunteer. But once that first cohort got through, Becky Grass says it was just like, it just exploded. Like people, I want that. We want this. So as passionate as Ruth is, because, look at this. This woman's been doing this for 30 years, and she still, like, amazes me at how passionate she is about it. But if you go out and you go to these schools, that's the same passion that you see, and compassion for their students and for themselves. Because I feel like the teachers themselves need these tools in terms of social emotional learning. Like what you were saying.
Well,
like,
right. I mean,
it's like a mirror image, right? Like that you see that teacher is like being successful, those students are striving to be successful. So I've only been 1 year with this program, and I'm still like blown away every time I go to a school.
Ruth, I'm curious. I mean, obviously you guys have done a significant amount of evaluation, and the Charlotte-Mecklenburg story around improve in graduation rates is quite impressive. I'm wondering, I can make assumptions around some of the academic measures that you've looked at, rise in test scores, graduation rates. I'm wondering, given who we are and what we're focused in on, if you've looked at any of the for lack of a better word, non-academic measures. Has there been, impact teacher satisfaction, culture and climate?
To a degree, but we're not. Most of our federal studies, which are the ones where you get the big, you have enough money to do a treatment control thing. Most of those were happening before we had the development of kind of new assessments for SEL, but we have done surveys of teachers and looked at one of the big, I think, okay, so both for teachers and students, we have surveys that give us some data around this. So for teachers, I think one of the relevant findings is their sense of, capability or feeling of comfort with being able to integrate literacy in their discipline. I think you also get a little, you get a glimpse of it sort of from the side by seeing how much they're able to turn over the instruction to the students. They become more comfortable with that. So that's on the teacher side. On the student side, there's some data I remember from one of our earlier studies. It was a study, I think, on science and science students in 9th grade. And there's an interesting set of measures around their willingness to approach difficult texts. So it's
I like that.
It's kind of like a sense of, I could try this. It doesn't mean they necessarily understand it better than before, although they probably do. But the whole difference between I couldn't even try and I can try this is, to me, a significant mindset kind of difference, and it translates into action, So that was particularly that was a particularly high, statistically significant difference for English learners.
That kind of growth mindset type.
I think I'm pretty sure we sent you the links to those studies.
Yeah, no, I was just.
I mean, I had a chance to look at them.
That's a lot. lot to
Yeah,
look
that's a lot. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna admit I did not read the research. You guys did a good job with the summary and.
We totally sent you a lot of stuff, but, you know, hey, it's Aspen Institute, you know.
Right, no, we're happy to take it all.
We wanted to send it to you, but that's where you can find some of it.
No, that's great. That's interesting. I mean, I think, look, you know, it's really interesting that that particular survey question in a lot of ways gets to this idea of growth mindset, which you know is getting a lot of traction and conversations these days. And, you know, in some ways it's being linked to, in lots of places it's being linked to academics, and other places it's being linked, beyond. And so it's interesting, you know, to see.
Well, that whole perseverance, like, okay, I'm gonna try it. Even if it's hard, I'm gonna try it.
Yeah. We're gonna move you a little closer. We just realized you were farther than we were yelling, and we don't need to.
I'm curious about your meeting with the educators, and just if you could tell us a little bit more on kind of how you were hearing them talking about that integration with academics versus the separate thing. Just a little bit more color and texture on that would be really interesting to us.
I missed that entirely. Yeah, Paula missed this part. She was at another meeting. So, one, the Council of Distinguished Educators is made up of a very diverse group of perspectives. There's quite a number of district superintendents. There's quite a number of district level coaches. There's a number of principals, and then there is a group of teachers. Some are core academic subjects teachers, and some are social and emotional learning teachers. So, you know, given that we have this very diverse group of perspectives, and that we've already talked about that we're all in this moment of protectionism, you know, I think that there for many of the teachers whose livelihood is explicit skill instruction in non-academic areas, they were very focused on the role of explicit instruction, right? Like, will my classroom still exist? Will my program still exist?
Got it.
Whereas folks that were sitting more at the system level, and system both being, well, either a core academic teacher, I guess, is one, but then, you know, system being building district or school district, building our school district, you know, they're much more focused on explicit instruction, and where does this tie into other priorities within our school, within our district. Maria Karstarfin, who's the superintendent in Atlanta Public Schools, who's been very committed to this work, you know, they've seen an uptick in test scores, an uptick in graduation rates, decrease in dropout rates, you know, up in Atlanta City Schools, and you know, attributing it to both, she would say both the explicit and implicit focus on SEED or social emotional learning. She feels like the implicit is, the implicit is doing more, right? When this is integrated with core academic subjects and other student-driven interests, whether it be career and technical education or, you know, more of not novelty, sort of specialty type classes, you know, that's where they're getting the desired outcomes, right? Like, overall, they're increasing engagement in school in across a variety of different means. And so I think, you know, there's a tension, right? Like, there are plenty of folks that are saying, hey, the idea of like how to physically demonstrate that you're paying attention is a skill that we need to teach. And that gets to this core concept that learning is social and emotional. And so I'm not, to be honest with you, I have no idea where they're going to go.
Well, yeah, and I just, you know, I come out with my hard-headedness now, and you know, and not say everything is.
You're allowed.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, I just have to say, in terms of learning theory, and kind of, I would say, and I don't know, you know, kind of where the research report lands on this or not, but, you know, generally speaking, you know, in various ways of looking at how people learn and so on, I don't want to say it as a blanket statement, but in general, you want to go for skills that aren't taught as discrete, separate things. Like, let's think about learning to sail a boat. You know, or no, I'll go to cooking because I'm better at cooking than sailing.
But I'm better at sailing. But I'm good at cooking too. Go ahead.
So it was cooking. I mean, you could say, okay, I want to learn to, I need to learn how to like crack eggs so they don't, I don't know what. I mean, how to separate an egg. Okay, so you do that. I mean, I want to learn how to bake a cake. I mean, it's like, you're doing things separate. Like, okay, let's say I have my niece and she wants to learn how to bake cakes. Okay, I'm going to spend, so I'm going to have her practice separating eggs 4 times before we do also how to mix things up and how to measure flour and sugar. I mean, do you know what I mean? It's like, learn.
No,
that's all. I just had to say.
No, I think you're right. And I think I wholeheartly think you're right. I think it's an interesting conversation because I think that because we have not defined the what is the what in what we're talking about around the seed or social emotional learning, everyone's operating from their own definition. And so some people are coming from the perspective of social emotional learning is the skill of a firm handshake. And agreed, like that can be taught as a separate concrete skill. It will be mastered once it is demonstrated in practice, mock job interview, actual job interview, whatever it is. And so I don't know, what does that look like developmentally, I think is the real struggle and tension. And what are the skills that should be pulled out or called out and taught separately versus those that are better embedded in. And I think a lot of this tension goes back to, right, like this was the conversation, what curriculum are we using to do some of this, because we are looking to meet a scope and sequence of a particular curriculum, not our own professional learning capacities. And so, right, like how all these pieces are interconnected is, I think, where the tension is.
And but I think it's also context, in terms of the context, so that a firm handshake in certain contexts or in certain cultures, would look very differently or may be manifested in a very different way. So I might decide not to have a firm handshake if I'm, maybe bow,
right?
Or maybe I have, but it's the concept, and that's what we try to tell people when we go to districts. Like, we don't want to take over. We're not coming here to tell you this is the curriculum, this is how you do it. We're coming here with the dispositions of how you can go about, and we can work with you with your curriculum. But it's a totally different concept around, not totally different concept, but it's a more open beyond classroom walls to what expectations are around a learner or teacher and a learner, or teaching and learning in context of whatever that system or that culture or that community looks like. This is a very different approach.
I understand, of course, that there are times and places where, I understand that there are certain kinds of things, and for certain kinds of students, I would say, that you want different, like my autistic niece had to learn how to look people in the eyes as a separate skill.
Right.
But what I fear is the generalization of that kind of separatist, taking things out in a very distinct way that it dumbs it down, I'll say, so that's, that's my
I think
I'll get off it.
No soapbox. No soapbox. I mean, you are right in the middle of what I think we are trying to negotiate, as the facilitators of this work, right? Like, whatever comes out of the commission is not my personal perspective, in no way, shape, or form, right? And we are the facilitators of the commission and of the councils and the panels and advisory groups that we have, and it's interesting to watch the conversations and try and figure out how do we capture those in a way that we honor the tension and the perspective, but we rely, on the evidence base. I mean, we can't move away from the evidence base.
That's good.
And
that's good.
That's
always going to be. That's got to be there.
and that's where we are. And I think So for us, we're trying to negotiate all those pieces from the perspective of okay, well, we have our evidence base, and now we have consensus statements of our evidence base, and those are going to ground us. So then where are the recommendations in practice and the related recommendations around policy, and policy at what level, which is a whole other conversation, you know, that are going to create what we hope will be the sea change in terms of, you know, our understanding of the purpose of public education or however we want to show it. I wish Tim Schreiber were in the room here. He says that so much more articulately than I ever can.
He
Well,
spoke for an hour and a half at the alignment, this SEL alignment conference, without notes, without notes, at the, in Nashville. And just like, I couldn't believe it. And then they asked him to go another half hour because somebody didn't show up.
I got to tell you,
And I mean,
it is a joy to, it is, I mean, as
Yeah.
a co-chair of the commission, I mean, we are very lucky in that the three co-chairs are Tim Schreiber, Linda Darling-Hammond, and Governor Engler, you know, former Governor of Michigan, who used to be at the Business Roundtable and now is on the,
that's great.
you know, the National Governing Assessment Board. And
one of our states where we do a lot of work. So,
I mean, it is, and the interaction between the three of them and how they think about this, and really, I mean, you know, this is a positioning conversation in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
Like, the know-how exists. You guys are a big part of it. You know, the know-how exists.
Yes.
This is a positioning conversation, and it's exciting to be a part of it. And like I said, you know, our biggest job is, you know, how do we do the positioning, and then how do we demonstrate here is the diverse array of resources.
So I know we're going to have to close it. And I just wanted to kind of wrap and kind of come back to this question of, you know, of course, you know, in terms of what we can offer to the landscape, let's say, and in terms of ways to participate. I don't know if there's, you know, openings, you know, for, you know, adding to any of the lists of, you know, scholars or partners or educational practitioners or whatever. I mean, that's one question. And then another question is, you know, you said you might be able in some way to share with the educational practitioners something about the work. And then the third question would be, you know, and of course many programs would want this, but I'll just say it, when there are kind of case studies or sidebars, et cetera, or even citations in a kind of final report around practices and so on, or in conferences or whatever, might there be ways for our work to be included? So just.
Yeah, so all really great questions, and I have to admit, only being week 3 on the job, I can't answer all of them. Week 3,
really? Go, girl. I mean, I was like so impressed. I thought, wow, I didn't know.
So I've been a part of the commission team as a consultant previously when I was still at AYPF. So I'm 3 weeks in, so I can't make some of these decisions yet because I'm still learning the way. But you know, in terms of one, we do have a partners collaborative. We have some parameters around types of partners that we're inviting into the collaborative because we don't feel like we can get in the business of inviting every curriculum, you know. So, but WestEd as a partner is an interesting possibility, and we currently don't have those types of partners. We really have been focused on sort of national membership organizations. So that's a question for our commissioners as you know, as we move forward, and one that is on the docket. So I'm happy to get back to you on that one. You know, the second question around how do we get this in front of the educators? So one of the big things that Paul and I are responsible for doing is really compiling, you know, resources and information in the field and share it with the commissioners, you know, through our commissioners and our councils through the regular updates. And so now, you know, it's going to be a lot easier for us to write the blurb about what this is and, you know, where the opportunities are. So that's on us, and we will absolutely, you know,
and I will
share.
I should probably have brought the Reading for Understanding, which is the actual framework, which is that's the
Is that something you can share with us electronically?
Absolutely, absolutely. Send you. I'll send it to you, and you'll.
That'd be great. Then we can put it in the Dropbox.
We have an ebook on that, right? I think we do. I'll find it. We can send it to you.
And then the last piece around, are there opportunities to be profiled? And the answer is, hopefully, potentially. We're still focused on the core content right now and what we're going to say. So the sidebars are, not yet, are not on our radar screen, but, again, that's the piece that we're focused in on, is just being sure that we catalog all of the high quality resources that are in this space, so that when we get to that point, we know who to go to and where to draw upon. But I will make this plug, and, Sabrina will not be surprised that I will be saying this when you guys maybe debrief with her or whatever you do. I did come from the American Youth Policy Forum, and they, I think, are an incredible partner in this space, and they are spending a lot of time right now thinking about, we're going to get kicked out, a lot of time right now thinking about this idea of skill building across academic, technical, and sort of employability or social emotional domains.
Who should we talk to?
I talked to Betsy and I talked to Loretta. That's first week on the job.
Really?
Yeah. I wonder if they see this as, I don't know.
I mean, I think, to be honest with you, I think AYPF always will worry about, like, are we endorsing a curriculum, a product, are we selling something? But I think, how do you think about this in partnership with, other pieces that are really focused on the capacity of adults to do this work, which I think is going to be a strand that they go. They also are a partner in the College and Career Readiness and Success Center at AIR, and they're very focused on personalization. And so, this to me feels like an incredible link with the personalization piece around, how do you build the capacity of adults to think about, personalized instruction, based upon a student's, identity and growth, which I heard you say. So I would follow up again.
I will.
Yeah, and I can prod them because I'm still
great. Maybe I can get them the next one with Ruth, and then that might,
Yeah, I think that would make it. I think that would make a difference. And I would, Corinne Deeds, who's relatively newer over there, is kind of leading some of the skill building type work.
Okay.
And so I think maybe including her as well would be helpful.
Yeah, at the time I met with them, I think they also saw this maybe, their deeper learning, and they were doing Hewlett, and I think they were just like really like involved, and which is a lot of overlap, but they were just maybe busy with that and moving and stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But I think, the conversation again would be worth.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll reach out to them.
Yeah, and if I can help, just let me know.
Thanks.
We're sorry, we have to vacate.
Thank you for your
time. So nice to meet you.
Same here.
Bella.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I love